Okay, so good evening, everyone. For today, I just want to give a discussion of what we have, of course, played, no, video last meeting, no. Of course, in the field of mobile programming, no. Since we started actually in saying that it is important for us to understand first the what do you call this one, uh, the Java programming, no, as our introductions, no, for web for mobile programming, no. So during our first last meeting, no, no, actually last meeting, we discussed, we introduced, no, the nuts and bolts of the mobile programming. No, so the nuts and bolts introductions, no, this will serve as initial stepping stone into the world of Android app development. No? So this section provides learners with an overview of the essential components and concepts that you will encounter throughout the mobile programming course. No? So it aims to familiarize with the foundational aspect of Android development, no, setting the stage for deeper exploration into more advanced topics, no. And in these introductory segments, no, you can expect to gain insights into the Android ecosystems, no, including its history, no, evolution, actually even the significance in the realm of mobile technology. You will learn about the key tools and resources available for Android development. I already instructed everyone to install the Android Studio IDE, again, to review your Java programming language, and of course, to understand the Android Software Development Kit, yung tinatawag nating SDK. Additionally, you will be introduced the fundamental concepts like activities, no, mayroon tayong discussion ng layouts, views, and intents, no, which form the building blocks of Android application. So this nuts and bolts, no, introduction also provides an opportunity, no, for you to understand the importance of proper development practices and coding conventions, no, in Android app development. In every programming language, now we have different actually, no, a reserve word, no, uh, syntax, no, and so on. So you will learn about the importance of adhering to industry standards, writing clean and maintainable code, and incorporating best practices for user interface design and user experience, or yung tinatawag nating UI UX, no, principles. In this introduction, no, we include, of course, a practical demonstration or hands-on exercises to help you familiarize with the Android development environment and tools. No? So we started as the worldwide, no, in programming, the Hello World. No? So by providing interactive learning experiences, learners or you can confidence in navigating Android Studio, writing new projects, and exploring the various features and functionalities available to them. Uh, so, again, our introduction serves as a foundational orientation, no, to Android app development, equipping you, no, with the essential knowledge and skills you need to embark on this journey into building mobile applications for the Android platform. Now, I already instructed, as I mentioned, that you need, of course, to install necessary requirements or software for Android or mobile development. Setting up your system is a crucial stage, no, in the journey of becoming an Android developer. Because in setting up your system, you will be able, as a learners, through the process of configuring, no, development environment to ensure that you have the necessary tools and resources, no, at their disposal. No, it begins with by outlining the hardware and software requirements for Android development, ensuring that you have access to compatible devices or emulators and the latest version of Android Studio. No? So once you have verified your system meets the prerequisite, no? So you are now guided through the installation process of Android Studio, the official integrated development in anong tawag nito? Environment or yung IDE for Android app development. And this include, syempre, kailangan i-download ang IDE from the official website. We need to select the appropriate components, no, to install and configuring any necessary setting or preferences. Now, additionally, you are introduced to the concept of software development kits, no, and how to install the Android SDK within Android Studio. So the SDK provides essential libraries, no, yung mga tools and resources for building, testing, and debugging Android applications. Because library is very important. Because let's say, for example, if you were using the term system print F or kaya naman yung mga functions na ginagamit natin, yung mga variables, yung mga reserved word, no, it must be within the essential libraries, no. And you need also need to know how to install the SDK components, including the platform tools, system images, no, and support libraries to ensure they have access to the latest features and APIs rather. So setting up your system may cover additional configuration steps such as setting up virtual devices for testing using the Android emulator, no, or connecting physical address or physical Android devices for debugging and deployment. So you will learn how to create and configure virtual devices with specific hardware profiles and system images, enabling you to simulate different device configuration and screen sizes. No, that's why in our sample program, no, kailangan nating ma-declare, no, because setting up your system, no, lays the groundwork for you to begin with Android development journey with a properly configured development environment. So in providing a step-by-step guidance in troubleshooting steps, this you or we ensure, no, that everything we need to start building and testing our Android application effectively. Now, in creating an emulator, no, uh, it is important, no, in the Android development process, because it allow you, no, as a developers to test the applications on virtual devices that emulate real-world hardware configurations and software environments. And this guides you through the process of creating and configuring virtual devices using the Android emulator, a built-in tool provided by Android Studio. So kaya kailangan naka-install ang ating Android Studio. The first step in creating an emulator is selecting the desired device configuration, including the device type, no, yung screen size natin, yung resolution, at saka yung Android version. You will learn how to choose from a variety of predefined device profiles or creation of a profiles tailored to your specific testing needs. No? And this flexibility enables you as a developer to simulate various device configuration and test, no, your application across different screen sizes and hardware specification. Once the device configuration is selected, you are guided through the process of configuring additional hardware properties such as yung RAM size natin, kasi medyo malaki kinakain ito na size na ano na kapag nag-save tayo, yung ating internal storage and yung camera settings. This setting allow you as developers to simulate realistic device behaviors and test your applications under different performance and resource constraint. Then right after na ma-configure natin yung hardware properties, we need to learn on how to select the appropriate system image for our emulator. The system, no, image contains the Android operating system and pre-installed applications, providing a complete software environment for testing applications. So we need to learn on how to download and install system images for different Android versions and device architectures, ensuring compatibility, no, with your target audience. So, as learner, we are guided through the process of starting and running the emulator from within Android Studio. So, you will learn how to launch the emulator, deploy the applications for testing, and interact with the virtual device using keyboard shortcuts and emulator controls. Now, in providing a simulated environment for testing, creating an emulator enables you as a developer to identify and address issues early in the development process, no? Ensuring a smooth and reliable user experience on a real devices. Again, why do we need to understand creating an emulator? Because it empowers you to set up virtual testing environments effectively, enabling you to test and debug your Android applications with confidence. So in providing step-by-step guidance and practical tips, you will equip as a developer with the tools you need to ensure your applications perform optimally across a wide range of devices and configurations. Now, the first activity, no, that I will play, no, video, no, last meeting is the Hello World. Hello World is open, no, the first program a beginner creates when learning a new programming language on or platform, because it serves as an essential introduction to the basic syntax and structure of the language. No? In the context of Android application development, creating a Hello World app involves building a simple application that displays the text Hello World, no, on the screen. And this introductory exercise helps you, no, become familiar with the Android Studio IDE, project structure, and layout files. So to create a Hello World app, you need to start by creating a new Android project, no, in Android Studio, and selecting a blank activity template. So this template provides a starting point for building the app's user interface and logic. Once the project is created, you can navigate to the layout file associated with the activity and add a text view element, no, to display the hello world message, if you still remember. No? So next, you as a learner needs to write the necessary code, no, to set the text on the text view to hello world. No? In that activity Java file or activities Java file, the this involved, no, obtaining a reference to the text view element using its unique identifier and calling a method to set its text property to the desired message. So you may also customize the appearance of the text, such as its color, no, size, and alignment to enhance the visual presentation of the app. No? So after writing the code, we can build and run the app on a virtual or physical device to see the hello world message display on the screen. And this hands-on experience, no, allows you to observe how changes to the code are reflected in the app's behavior and appearance in the real time. So in successfully creating and running a Hello World app, you gain confidence, no, in your ability to develop Android applications and are motivated to explore more advanced topics in app development. So Hello World activity, or the first activity that we did, no, the Hello World served as a foundational exercise in Android app development, introducing you to the essential concept and techniques that you will use throughout your journey. So by building a simple app, no, that display a greeting message, you can gain hands-on experience with Android Studio. You can able to lay out files, no, text view elements, and basic programming concepts, setting the stage for deeper exploration, more complex app development topics. Another is the edit text view, no? Based on the given video, no, the edit text view is a fundamental component in Android app development, allowing users to input and edit text directly within an app's user interface. This versatile widget supports various input types, no? Including plain text, kagaya ng passwords, no? Email, addresses, and numeric values, making it suitable for a wide range of use cases, from login forms to search fields to messaging applications. In the context of Android app development, so the edit text view is typically defined in an XML layout file where developers can specify its attributes, no, such as yung size, yung position, yung appearance, at saka yung behavior. So developers, you as a developers can customize actually the edit text views appearance by setting properties such as text color, font size, background color, and border style to align with the app's design and branding guidelines. Once defined in the layout file, the edit text view can be referenced and manipulated programmatically, no, in the corresponding activity or fragment class. So you as a developer can obtain a reference to the edit text view using its unique identifier and then interact with it dynamically, such as setting its initial text value, enabling or disabling input, or listening to user or listening for user input events. One common use case for the edit text view is capturing user input and processing it within the app. So you as developers can retrieve the text centered, or you as developer can retrieve the text entered by the user, okay, from the edit text view and use it to perform various actions such as performing a search query, updating a database record, or sending a message. Additionally, developers can implement input validation to ensure that the user's input meets criteria, no, or certain criteria or constraint such as minimum length, the required format, or the range of values. So the edit text view is an essential component in an Android app development, enabling user to interact with apps by inputting text directly within the user interface. So by leveraging the edit text view, developers can create intuitive and user-friendly experiences that empower users to input and edit text, no, seamlessly, enhancing the functionality and usability of your application or your apps. Another thing, of course, is the button and linear layouts. Based on the given video, no, as what we presented last time, no, in Android app development, no, buttons are essential user interface element used to trigger actions or events within an application because they provide users with a visual cue to perform a specific tasks such as submitting a form, navigating to another screen, or initiating process. Button can be customized with various attributes, including text, color, size, and shape to align the app's design and branding guidelines. Now, linear layouts naman po are a fundamental layout manager in Android that arranges child views in a single direction, either horizontally man yan or vertically. So buttons are often organized within linear layouts to control their positioning and spacing within the user interface. So developers can use linear layouts to create intuitive and visually appealing and arrangement of buttons and other UI elements, ensuring a cohesive and consistent user experience across different devices and screen sizes. So when designing button layouts using linear layouts, you as developer have flexibility actually, no, in controlling the placement and alignment of buttons within the layout. So they can specify attributes such as gravity, yung weight, and margins to achieve the desired spacing and alignment of buttons, no, relative to each other and other UI elements. This allow you as developers to create responsive and adaptive layouts that adapt dynamically to the different screen sizes and orientation. So moreover, linear layouts now support nesting, allowing developers to create complex UI or user interface design by embedding multiple linear layouts with each other. So this hierarchical structure enables developers to organize buttons and other UI elements into logical groups or sections, facilitating easier maintenance and management of the UI layout code. So leveraging nested linear layouts, developers can create sophisticated and visually appealing user interfaces that enhance the overall user experience. So buttons and layouts are fundamental components in Android app development, enabling you as developers to create intuitive and visually appealing user interfaces. In organizing buttons with linear layouts, developers can control their placement, spacing, and alignment to create responsive and adapted layouts that deliver a consistent user experience across different devices and screen sizes. So, another is the responding to button clicks. So, right after creating your buttons through linear layout, so the next will be how do your system or your applications respond to a button clicks. Responding to a button clicks is a critical aspect of Android app development as it allows developers to implement, take note the term, implement interactive functionality that responds to user inputs. Buttons serve as a triggers for actions or events within an application, and handling button clicks involves defining the behavior or logic that should occur when a button is pressed, yung kapag pinindot na natin siya by the user. So in Android, responding to button clicks typically involves setting up event listeners naman. Event listeners that listen for click events on the buttons and execute corresponding actions or methods when the events occur. Kaya kung nakikita kayo sa ating code ng event listener, the idea is by responding to button clicks na ginagawa ng ating mga users. So, again, this button clicks typically involve setting event listeners that listen to click or listen for click events on the buttons and execute corresponding action or methods when the events occur. This process is facilitated by, kung nakikita natin yung code na on-click listener interface which defines a single method. Or kaya yung on-click na open and close parenthesis is invoked when the button is clicked. So to respond to button clicks, developers can implement the on-click listener interface either inline as an anonymous inner class or as a separate class that implements the interface. So in either case, developers override the on-click open and close parenthesis method to define the desired behavior, such as navigating to another screen, performing a calculations, displaying a message, or executing a functions. Once the on-click listener is set up for a button, developers can associate it with the button using the set on-click listener method. So this method takes an instance of the on-click listener as a parameter and register it with the button, enabling it to receive click events and trigger the defined behavior when clicked by the users. In addition to handling button clicks, programmatically, developers can also define button click behavior declaratively using the XML attributes in the layouts files. So specifying the Android on Android, yung Android on click attribute and providing the name of a method in the activity or fragment class, developers can link the button directly to the method and execute the corresponding logic when the button is clicked. So responding to button clicks is a fundamental skill in Android app development. So allowing developers to create interactive and engaging user experience. So by setting up event listeners and defining click event handlers, developers can implement button click functionality that enhance the usability and functionality of your apps, making your more intuitive and responsive to user inputs. Nota bene or reminders, nota bene or reminders. In Android app development, there are several important considerations and best practices that developers should keep in mind to ensure that success and effectiveness of your projects. These important notes cover various aspects of app development, including performance optimization, security compatibility, and user experience, among others. One key consideration is performance optimization, which involves optimizing the app's code, resources, and architecture to ensure smooth performance and responsiveness on the different devices and operating system versions. You as developers should have or should strive no, to minimize resource usage, avoid memory leaks, no, and implement efficient algorithms and data structure to optimize the app's performance and enhance the user experience. No? Another critical aspect is security because as an Android apps often handle sensitive user data and interact with various system resources and APIs, you as developers should follow security best practices such as encrypting sensitive data, implementing secure authentication mechanism, and validating user input to prevent security vulnerabilities and protect user privacy. Moreover, compatibility is essential to ensure that the app functions correctly on a wide range of devices with different screen sizes, resolutions, and hardware capabilities. So developers should design responsive layouts, test the app on various devices and Android versions, and use compatibility libraries and APIs to ensure broad device compatibility and a consistent user interface. Additionally, developers should prioritize user experience and user interface design to create intuitive, no, visually appealing, and easy-to-use apps that delight users. No? This include designing clear navigation flows, providing meaningful feedback, and optimizing the app's usability and accessibility for all users, including those with disabilities. No? Developers should stay up to date with the latest trends, tools, and technologies in Android app development and participate in the vibrant Android development or developer community. So be a member of different Android developer community in Facebook, in TikTok, in Instagram, in some blogs actually, no? For you to exchange ideas, no, share knowledge, and seek assistance when needed. Staying informed and engaged, developers can continuously improve your skills, stay ahead of the curve, and create innovative and impactful apps that resonate with users. So, it means to say that it is served, no, as your guiding principles and reminders for Android developers, highlighting the key considerations and best practices to ensure some principles and staying informed. You as developers can create a high quality, secure, and user-friendly apps that meet, of course, the needs and expectation of the target audience. No? Now, another, of course, is the debugging. No? We have a video presentation about debugging last time. No? So, debugging is, of course, a critical aspect of Android app development that involves identifying and resolving. Hindi lang ma-identify. Dapat we need to resolve errors, bugs, and issues in the code to ensure the smooth operations and functionality of the app. So the Android development tools, yung ADT bundle, provides developers with various debugging tools and utilities, including the Dalvik debug, monitor service, and logcut, which are essential for diagnosing and troubleshooting problems during app development. Okay. Sorry, okay. Now, the Android development tools or ADT bundles provide you with various debugging tools and utilities, including, sabi ko nga kanina, Dalvik debug, monitor service, and logcut, which is very essential, no, for diagnosing and troubleshooting problems during your app development. So, DDM or yung ating Dalvik debug monitoring services, the DBMS, DDMS is a monitoring tool that allows you, as developer, to interact with Android devices or emulators connected to their development environment. It provides a range of features, including device and emulator control, screen capture, file management, and network traffic monitoring. So you as a developer can use DDMS to inspect device state, to capture screenshots, simulate device input, and analyze runtime behavior, helping them identify issues and diagnose problem more effectively. Logcat is a logging utility in Android that displays systems and applications log messages generated by the Android operating system and apps running on the device or emulator. So it provides developers with a real-time access to log messages, including the debug, info, warning, no error, and verbose messages, enabling them to track the execution flow, monitor variable values, and identify errors or exemption thrown during an app execution. Using Logcat, you as developer can filter and search log messages based on a specific criteria, such as tag, priority, or keywords, to focus on relevant information and narrow down the scope of their debugging efforts. Logcat also support custom log messages generated by developers using the Android.util.log class, allowing them to instrument their code and log custom messages for debugging purposes. In addition to that, in addition to viewing log messages in a real time, developers can also save Logcat output to a file for later analysis or sharing with team members or stakeholders. And this feature is practically useful for capturing and documenting app behavior, identifying patterns of or trends, and log messages, and diagnosing intermittent or hard to reproduce issues that may occur during app testing or deployment. So debugging with DDMS and Logcat is an essential part of the Android app development process, enabling developers to diagnose and troubleshoot problems efficiently and effectively. So, leveraging these debugging tools and utilities, developers can identify errors, track down bugs, and improve the quality and reliability of your apps, ensuring a smooth and seamless user experience. Plus, of course, is the saving files to internal storage. Saving files to internal storage is a common requirement in Android app development, allowing apps to store data locally on the device internal storage, space for later retrieval or manipulation, and internal storage is private to the app and inaccessible to other apps users, making it suitable for storing sensitive or app specific data that should not be shared or modified externally. In Android, apps can save files to internal storage using the file system APIs provided by the Android SDK, such as the Java.io and Java.nio packages. Now, developers can create and manipulate files and directories programmatically, including reading from and reading to files, creating directories, and checking file properties and attributes. So to save a file to internal storage, you as developers typically start by obtaining a reference to the app's internal storage directly using the get file, yung get files there or the directory opening close parenthesis, or kaya naman get cache dir or dir opening close parenthesis methods provided by the context class. So these methods return a file object representing the directory where the app can store its private files or cache data. So once the storage directory is obtained, developers can use standard file operations such as file input-output streams to create or open a file within the directory and write data to it. So this process involves creating a file output stream or file writer object, specifying the file path within the storage directory and writing data to the file using method like write or printf or print line. It is important for us as developers to handle the file input-output operations asynchronously to avoid blocking the main UI thread and ensure a responsive user experience. So this can be achieved by using background threads, async task, or other concurrency mechanism provided by the Android platform to perform the file operations of that main thread. So saving files to internal storage enables Android app to store data locally on the device for various purposes such as caching, offline usage, or user preferences. So by leveraging the file system APIs provided by the Android SDK, you as developers can manage files and directories programmatically, enabling apps to persist data securely and efficiently on a device internal storage space. No? Now, another thing to consider is the reading files from internal storage. No? Right after saving the file, how will be able to retrieve the file or how will be able to read the files from the internal storage. No? Reading files from internal storage is another aspect of Android app development, allowing apps to retrieve previously saved data from the device internal storage space. So internal storage is private to the app and provides a secure location for storing sensitive or app-specific data that should not be accessed or modified by other apps of users. In Android, apps can read files from internal storage using the file system APIs provided by the Android SDK, such as, sabi ko kanina, java.io and java.nio packages. Developers can accept the app's internal storage directory using the get files dir method and so on. So once a directory is obtained, developers can use standard file operations such as file input streams to open and read data from a file within the directory. And this involves creating a file input stream object, specifying that the file path within the storage directory, and reading data from the file using methods like read or readline. No? It is important for the developers to handle the I/O operations asynchronously to avoid blocking of UI tray. Now, string resource and localization. No? String resources and localizations are essential aspect of Android app development, allowing you as developers to externalize and manage string use in the app's user interface and other resources such as images, layouts, or even yung colors. No? So externalizing string and other resources, you as developers can centralize your management, facilitate localization and internationalization, and improve the maintainability and flexibility of your apps. So in Android, string resources are defined in XML files located in the res values directory of the app's project structure. And each string, each string resource is represented by a string, yung may element with a unique name and value attribute where developers specify the string value that will be displayed in the app's user interface. Localization refers to the process of adapting an app to support multiple languages and locales, allowing it to be used by users from different regions and linguistic background. So Android actually supports localization by providing resource qualifiers that enable developers to provide alternative versions of resources such as strings, layouts, and images for different languages and locales. No? So to support localization, developers create separate resource directories for each language or local they want to support, such as yung res/values -fr/ for French or res/values.es for Spanish naman. Within these directories, developers place a string resource file containing translated version of the string used in the app, allowing the app to display the appropriate language based on the user device setting. So by externalizing string and other resources and supporting localization, you as developers can make your apps more accessible and user-friendly to a global audience. So users can interact with the app in their preferred language, enhancing the overall user experience and increasing user engagement and satisfaction. Kasi nga ngayon ang mga application, pwede na ako mamili. Ano ba, tawag dito, gusto ko ba, ano, is Chinese or prepared ko English or prepared ko Tagalog. So yun ang ibig ko sabihin. Another thing is the creating launcher icons. No? Yung magla-launch, yung pag, di ba pagka-clinic, ila-launch siya, ganon. So creating launcher icons is an essential step in Android app development as these icons serve as the entry point for users to launch the app from their device home screen or app drawer. So launcher icons should be visually appealing, representative of the app's brand or purpose, and conform to Android design guidelines to ensure consistency and compatibility across different devices and screen resolutions. So in Android, launcher icons are typically created using image assets in various sizes and densities to support different screen densities and display resolution. So developers provide launcher icons in different sizes such as MDPI, merong HDPI, no, XHDPI, XXHDPI, and XXXHDPI to ensure optimal rendering and visual quality or device with varying pixel density. So you need to have a background with animation, no, because or even digital animation, no, for you to understand what I'm talking about, no. To create a launcher icons, developers can use graphic design, as I mentioned, pwedeng Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or Sketch, no, to design the icon artwork according to the recommended dimensions and guidelines provided by our best friend Google, no. So alternatively, developers can use online tools or icons generators that automate the process of generating launcher icons based on the input images or specification. So once the icon artwork is created, developers can generate the required icon assets for different screen densities using Android Asset Studio or similar tools. And these tools generate icon files in the appropriate sizes and formats. Pwede namang PNG, pwedeng WebP, and package them into a single zip file for easy integration into the app project. So after generating the icon assets, developers can add them to the app's project structure in the REST map directory, no, organized into the subdirectories corresponding to the different screen densities, no. The launcher icon for an app is specified in the Android manifest.xml file using the Android icon attribute, which references the appropriate drawable resource representing the launcher icon. So creating launcher icons is an aspect of Android development, as these icons are the first point of contact for users and display a significant role in shaping the app's brand identity and user experience. So by following Android design guidelines and providing visually appealing and high-quality launcher icons, you as developers can enhance the app's visibility, recognition, and appeal to the users. Right after that, of course, we need to know on how to run our applications in mobile phone. Now, running an app on a physical Android device is an essential step in the app development process, allowing you as developers to test the app's functionality, performance, and user experience on real hardware. While the Android emulator provides a convenient way to test apps on virtual devices, testing on a physical device offers benefits such as accurate performance metrics, real-world user scenarios, and device specific behavior testing. So to run an app on a physical Android device, you as developers first need to enable developer option and USB debugging on the device. And this involves accessing the device setting, navigating to the About Phone section, and tapping on the build number multiple times to enable developer options. So once developer options are enabled, developers can enable USB debugging under developer options menu. After enabling USB debugging on the device, developers connect the device to their development machine using a USB cable. So the device should appear in the Android Studio devices list, allowing developers to select it as the target device for running the app. So if the device does not appear in the device list, developers may need to install USB drivers for the device on their development machine. So once the device is connected and recognized by Android Studio, developers can build and run the app on the device by clicking the run button or selecting the run app in new option. Android Studio will compile the app, deploy it to the device, and launch it automatically, allowing developers to interact with the app and test its functionality in a real-world environment. So testing on the physical device enables developers to identify and address device-specific issues such as performance bottlenecks, uh, compatibility issues, and hardware-dependent bugs that may not be apparent when testing on virtual devices. No, it also provides developers with valuable insights into the app's real-world performance and usability, helping them optimize and improve the app for a better user experience. So running an app on a physical Android device is an essential step in the app development process, allowing developers to test the app's functionality, performance, and user experience on a real hardware. So enabling use USB debugging, Android Studio developers can ensure that the app performs optimally and meets the expectation of the user. Then right after, of course, we need to look into the saving program data or the preferences. No, saving program data preferences. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, no, in an Android app development, saving program data using preferences is a convenient and efficient way to store key value pairs of primitive data types, no? Such as, ang common naman ginagamit natin, integers, booleans, floats, and string, no? Persistently across app session. No? Preferences are commonly used for storing user preferences, setting, configuration values, and other small amounts of data that need to be preserved even when the app is closed or the device is restarted. Actually, Android provides the Shared Preferences API, which allows developers to create and manage preferences associated with the app's package name. Shared preferences are stored on XML files in the app's private directory within the device internal storage, making them accessible only to the app and providing a secure location for storing sensitive or app-specific data. So to save program data using preferences, developers obtain a reference to the shared preference object associated with the app's package name using the get shared preferences method provided by the context class. And this method takes the name of the preference file and an optimal mode parameter, allowing developers to specify whether the preferences should be private to the app or accessible to other apps. Once the shared preferences object is obtained, developers can use its editor method to obtain a shared preferences editor object, which providing methods for adding, removing, or modifying preferences value. So as developers use methods like put in, put boolean, put, put in, put boolean, put float, put string, and put long to store individual preference values, specifying a key value pair for each preference. Now, after adding or modifying preference values, developer must call the commit or apply method or the shared preference editor object to persist the changes to the preference file. So the commit method writes the changes synchronously to the preference file, while the apply method writes the changes asynchronously in a background thread, improving responsiveness and performance. Saving program data using preference is a simple and effective way to store a small amount of data persistently across app session in Android. So leveraging the shared preferences API, developers can create and manage preferences associated with the app's package name, providing user with a customizable and personalized app experience. Another is the toss of alerting the user. Toast are a lightweight and non-intrusive way to provide feedback or alert to the user about important events. Kayong mga, di ba pagka may text, may tumutunog, no? Alerting the user, toast ang tawag doon. Now, so, notifications, no? O kaya naman important events doon sa ating Android apps. Toast are displayed as a small pop-up messages. Nagpa-pop up yan. Merong dito, di ba pagka kahit naka-off yung inyong phone, makikita nyo may message, ano, kung iPhone, makikita may message na, pero minsan sa iba pwede mo makita yung content, no? So, actually, it displays small pop-up messages, no, that appear briefly at the bottom of the screen, informing users about specific action or status updates without interrupting their workflow or requiring additional user interaction. So in Android, developers can create and display Toast message using the Toast class providing by the Android SDK. So to create a Toast message, developer, kayo po dapat ma-obtain muna ang reference to the application context using methods like get application context or get activity, or depending on the context in which the toss is being displayed. So on the context is obtained, developers can call the make text method on the toss class to create a new toss object. So passing in the context, the text message display and the duration of the for which the toss should be shown, no? Yung length underscore short or length underscore long. So dito may nagpa-pop up na message. Okay. After creating a toss objects, now developers can call the show method to display the tossed message on the screen. So the tossed message appears as a small pop-up window at the bottom of the screen, displaying the specified text message for the specified duration before disappearing automatically. No, nawawala naman siya eh, kapag di natin, ano, no. Pero doon sa, katulad sa iPhone, pwede mong balikan eh, i-up mo lang. So developers can customize the appearance and the behavior of toss messages by setting additional attributes such as gravity, margin, and layout parameters using method like set gravity and set margin. And this allows developers to control the positioning and appearance of toss messages to better suit the app's design and user experience. So toss provide a simple and effective way to alert user about important events or notification in an Android app. By displaying brief and non-intrusive messages at the bottom of the screen, TOS enable developers to provide timely feedback and enhance the usability and responsiveness of their apps without disrupting the user's interface flow. So let's say kung magginagawa ka dun sa sa devices mo, walang magiging problema. No, hindi siya makaka-apekto kung may ginagawa ka. Another thing, of course, is adding a new activity, no? Adding a new activity is a fundamental step in Android app development, enabling developers to create additional screen or UI components to enhance the app's functionality and user interface. Activities serve as the building blocks of an Android app, representing individual screens or windows that user can interact with to perform specific tasks or access different content. So to add a new activity to Android app, developers typically start by creating a new Java class and extend the activity class provided by the Android SDK. And this class serve as the controller or logic component for the new activity, defining its behavior, lifecycle methods, and interaction with the app user interface. Once the activity class is created, developers define its layout using XML layout files located in the REST layout directory of the file of the app's project's structure. So layout files specify the visual components and arrangement of UI elements within the activity screen, including views such as buttons, text fields, images, and other widgets. After defining the layout, developers define the new activity in the app's Android manifest.xml file using the activity element, specifying attributes such as the activity names, ano yung label nun, ano yung icon, at saka ano yung intent filters. No? And this registration step informs the Android system about the experience, the existence of the new activity, enable users to navigate to it from other parts of the app or from external sources. Once the activity is defined and registered, developers can start the activity programmatically from other parts of the app using intents and start activity methods calls. Intent are objects used to communicate between different components of an app, such as activities, services, and broadcast receivers. And start activity is a method for starting a new activity based on the intent. Okay. Another is, of course, is displaying images, in display images with the image view, view. Displaying images is a common requirement for various purposes, such as showcasing product photos, profile pictures, or multimedia content. So the image view is versatile widget provided by the Android SDK, specifically designed for displaying images within the app's user interface. So to display images with the image view, developers typically start by including an image view element in the XML layout files associated with this activity or fragment where the image will be displayed. Yung image view can be customized with attributes such as SRC, yung source po na tinatawag natin, scale type, layout parameters. So once the image view is defined in the layout file, developers can load an image into the image view programmatically using various methods provided by the image view class. Let's say, for example, kapag tayo po ay nag-set ng image resource using the set image resource method, set a drawable object using the setting drawable method, or set a bitmap object using the setting or set image bitmap method. So we as developers can also load images from external sources such as URLs, pwedeng galing sa files or content providers using third-party libraries like Glides or Picasso, which provide additional features such as caching, image transformation, and asynchronous loading to enhance performance and user experience. Another is getting touch coordinates. In Android programming, getting touch coordinates refers to the process of capturing and interpreting user touch input on the device screen to determine the location and movement of the touch events. So touch coordinates are essential to implement interactive features such as gesture recognition, touch-based controls, and drawing applications. To get touch coordinates in the Android app, developers typically override the touch event method of a view or activity class and handle the motion event object passed to it. So motion event objects are encapsulate information about touch events, including the event view, action underscore down for a touch down event, action underscore move for a touch move event, and action underscore up for a touch up event. So the position of the touch event in screen or either view coordinates in additional metadata such as pressure and size. So within the touch event method, developers can access the motion event object and extract the touch coordinates using methods such as getX, and getY to get the X and Y coordinates of the touch event relative to the view or screens. Developers can then use these coordinates to determine the location or the touch event and implement custom logic or behavior based on the user interaction. Additionally, developers can implement touch event listeners on specific view using the set on touch listener. So method or implement gesture director or detectors using classes like gesture detector of or scale gesture detector to recognize and handle specific types of touch gesture such as taps, swipes, pinches, and rotations. Syempre, pamilyar din tayo sa ano, no, sa alert dialogues, no? Alert dialogues are also important in UI components sa Android natin. It is used to communicate important information, warnings, or prompts to users. They are commonly used to confirm actions, display error message, or provide notifications that required attention. So alert dialogues typically consist of a title, a message, and one more actions buttons or for users to interact with. No? Developers can create alert dialogue using the alert dialogue class provided by the Android SDK. To create an alert dialogue, you as developers instantiate the alert dialog that builder object, set its properties such as title, ano yung message, anong icon, at ano yung button ang gagamitin, then call the show method to display the dialog to the user. Alert dialog can be customized extensively to meet the specific requirements of the app. Developers can add buttons with custom text and behavior, set custom icons, specify a custom layout for the dialogue context, and event implement customs listeners to handle user interaction with the dialogue. Now, common use of cases for alert dialogue include confirming a user action before proceeding, katulad ng deleting a file. Di ba bago tayo mag-delete, tatanungin ka pa, parang, are you sure you need to delete this file? Or may mga ganon, no? Notifying you as a user about an error or problem that occurred, no? Meron din nag-ano na, halimbawa, network connection and error. Halimbawa, nag-internet ka, bigla nawala. May magpa-pop up, sabi, network connections error, or prompting the user to make a decision or provide input. Halimbawa, sa credit card. Di ba, may magkaano doon, na may magka-pop na input, tinatanong kung confirming of your purchase, ikaw ba bumili nito, ikaw ba o magta-transfer ka ng GCash, ikaw ba talaga nagta-transfer ng GCash, and so on. So yun ang tinatawag nating alert dialogues, no? Then last of course, another thing is the event listener pattern, no? The event listener pattern, also known as the observer patterns, is widely used design pattern in software development, including Android app development, because it is used to establish a one-to-many dependencies between objects where one object maintain a list of dependent objects and notifies them of any changes in its state or behavior. The event listener pattern is commonly used to handle user interactions such as button clicks, list item selections, and touch events. Let's say, for example, no, when the user clicks a button in an Android apps, the button acts as the subject that generates an event, and any registered listeners or observers are notified of the event and can respond accordingly. Parang di ba sa phone natin, kapag nag-open ka ng Facebook sa another mong phone, kailangan mo pang pumunta dun sa sa another phone para i-allow. Na? 'Yon. So, yun is an example ng event listener. Okay? So, when an event occurs such as button click, the corresponding UI component invokes the appropriate method on all registered listeners, passing relevant information about the event as parameters, and this allow observers to react to the event and perform any necessary actions such as updating the UI, executing business logic, or triggering other events. So by using the event listener pattern, developers can decouple the UI logic from the application logic, making the code mode modular, reusable, and maintainable. It also enables developers to implement a loosely coupled system where components can interact with each other without needing to know the details of the of their implementations. Okay? So, I will stop muna po doon para magtuloy-tuloy muna sa ating discussion. So, nag-stop tayo sa 21 para matandaan ko. Topic 21. Topic 21. Now, I'll just want to, we have still time. Wait for a while.